Thank you. So my name is Rob Calver. I'm Senior Publisher for Mathematics, Statistics and Physics books at Taylor & Francis Group. And I'll be talking today about launching a statistics book series for a general audience. So first, I'd just like to say thanks to Kevin and Tom for the invite to what is a truly remarkable program. I'm very privileged to be part of it and hope I can make some small contribution to it. So here's a quick overview of what I'm going to talk about. Very briefly give an overview of the statistics list at Taylor & Francis. Talk a bit about the American Statistical Association, because this is a joint venture. Our series is the ASA-CRC series on statistical reasoning in science and society. Quick look at some of the published titles in the series, and then I think the thing that is most pertinent to the discussion of this meeting is the challenges we have faced in working on this particular series. So here's a very quick look at statistics at TNF. TNF, Taylor & Francis, as you may know, you've probably heard of us. We're a large academic publisher of books and journals. We have about 3,000 journals in our portfolio, publish about 8,000 new books every year. The statistics books are published under the Chapman and Hall imprint. We keep that name because that's a very famous old name in mathematics and statistics that dates back to the 60s and 70s, when statistics was transitioning from a mathematical subject into a more applied one. And so the late Sir David Cox was doing a lot of work for us on this monograph series and developing new research books in statistics, and it kind of grew from there. If I go back an extra 120 years, Chapman and Hall was actually a very famous British publisher in the middle of the 19th century, was a publisher of Charles Dickens. So I sometimes wonder how Dickens would feel about the fact that Chapman & Hall nowadays is a specialist publisher in math, statistics and computer science. And maybe he'd be quite proud of that. So here we are today. We're publishing research books and academic textbooks. Very well known for our book series, as I mentioned, the Green series. And also relevant to this discussion, we are the publishing partner for the ASA journals. So the American Statistical Association is the largest statistical society in the world. Has about 19,000 members, most of them in America, but a big contingent in the UK, Europe, and the rest of the world as well. As I said, we work with them on their journals, and in about 2015, we started talking to the ASA about working with them on a book series. And after lots of discussion, we landed on this particular pillar of their strategic plan, which is increasing the visibility of our profession. And I want to point you to the 4 objectives, which I've listed here in full under the subheading of that pillar of public awareness. And I think the one that is particularly relevant here is communicating the value and relevance of statistics to science and society. So, a very worthy pillar of their plan that I think, you see across a lot of different scientific societies and organizations. I think Rob will talk shortly about the Statistical Ambassadors program at the RSS, which is kind of driven by this desire to increase the public awareness of statistics as a profession and generally increase statistical literacy within the public. So we decided to launch this series. We wanted to create a series of books that highlight the important role of statistics and probability in many different areas of everyday life across science and society. They are not technical books about methodology and computing. They are narrative, non-technical descriptions of how statistics is used in different aspects of everyday life. So topics covered in the series already include the media, science, politics, sports, and national security, and many others. The audience, I said in the title of the talk, it's for a general audience. By that we mean professionals across many fields, courses in high school and colleges, and the general public. Although, of course, I've learned across these 2 days that doesn't exist. The last thing to say about the series is we're looking at shorter books of around 100 to 150 pages, which can be written and also, more importantly, read in a reasonable amount of time. So, it's not a promotional piece for the series, so I don't want to focus too much on the published titles, but there's lots of things in there, lots of interesting topics already covered, lots of potential topics we could cover. I do want to draw your attention just to the latest book in the series in the bottom right-hand corner there, Statistics Behind the Headlines. John Baylor is an academic statistician based at Miami University in Ohio. Rosemary Pennington is his colleague at Miami, who's a professor of journalism. Now, you may know the podcast that they host, which is called Stats and Stories. And on that podcast, they invite a different researcher from a different field on every episode to talk about how they use statistics in their work. So it's very much aligned with the aims and scope of our particular series. So we're really excited about this particular book, which I think kind of, is a good example of the kind of books we have in the series and what we're trying to achieve with it. And it was, you may have heard of it because it was just featured on More or Less. Tim Harford had John and Rosemary on to talk about the book, the writing process, and their podcast. So the challenges we faced with developing this particular series. I say identifying potential topics for the series. This is not really a challenge because I think it's actually fairly straightforward. As been referenced a lot of times already in these 2 days of this workshop, data, evidence, the use of statistical methods is so widespread across science and society now. We've got a very long wish list of topics that we'd like to see included in the series, and some great topics already covered, as I mentioned. Finding authors is the challenge, I think, because these are very difficult books to write because we need authors who can write accurately about the statistics with the appropriate rigor, but also make the books engaging and accessible. So the Baylor and Pennington book that I just mentioned, I think is a good example because John's obviously a very experienced, very senior academic statistician. Rosemary comes from the journalism background, so I think the combination of the two of them together works really well for ensuring that the books are, that particular book is well written in terms of the statistics and also engaging in terms of the writing. So for the same reason, the books require, I would say, more reviewing and editing, so more support for the author to ensure the correctness, readability and usefulness of the books. And these two facts, these two things I've mentioned here, guiding the authors through to project completion, I think this is I feel is the primary role of the publisher, the way I view it, is that we support our authors in writing the best book they can and actually managing to see the book through to completion. Because as I said, these are really challenging books to write and to write them well. And so we've signed a lot of books into the series that probably will never see the light of day because the authors started working on them with the best intentions and for whatever reason, struggled to make progress, struggled to see them through. So for me, this is the primary role of the publisher is to help communicators, authors, present their ideas and as I say, help them to make sure they can actually see these things through to completion. And then the final thing to say is once you have the product in hand, you've identified the topic, you've found the authors, you've done all that work to create the book, you've then got to reach what I feel is a potentially broad audience for these books. So we're an academic publisher. We're very good at reaching the academic audiences for the books, which obviously does exist. We're good at reaching the professional audience as well. We're less equipped at meeting that kind of more general audience, although we're trying as hard as we can. We have a media team pushing our books. As I say, a number of them are featured on More or Less and in other media. We have a trade sales team which help us try and sell the books into the trade as well. But it is a challenge, but for me, I think it's a worthy challenge. I love this series. I'm a very passionate about statistics. I've been publishing statistics books for more than 20 years, and I try as much as I can to make a contribution by creating good books, and this series is very much part of that. So we will continue that work, and so that's really all I had to say. So I hope that gives you an insight into the series, the aims and scope of it, and the role that we as a publisher play in trying to help people with their communication. And that's it.